when you're classifying triangles by angles, you have acute triangles.
Acute, obtuse, and right.
Obtuse triangles and right triangles. And you should know this. Okay? Acute, all angles are less than 90. Obtuse, you got one fat angle. One angle is greater than 90. And a right, you would have a box there. One angle measures 90 degrees exactly. All right, the first guy is scalene. No sides are congruent. They all measure something differently. Isosceles, two sides are congruent, and two angles are congruent, okay? And equilateral, all sides are congruent, and all angles are congruent. So on a scalene, it would look something like that. And let's say this side here is like a 4, and then we have a 6 and an 8. That's a scalene, okay? An isosceles has two sides the same. We've talked about this a little bit. And two angles opposite those sides are the same. That's an isosceles. And an equilateral have all sides and all angles measure the same. What do the sides measure in an equilateral triangle? What do the sides measure in an equilateral triangle? It depends how big it is, right?
Yeah.
What do the angles measure in an equilateral triangle?
180.
What does each one measure?
Each one.
If they all measure the same, they all measure 60 degrees.
Okay, I'm like.
Cannot draw an equilateral triangle where all three angles don't measure 60. It's impossible to draw. So remember that only the angles you can tell, but not the sides. Now, when you get your paper, this triangle is drawn like that, but you can feel free to turn it upside down so that the two sides that are equal are like in the mountain, are forming the mountain, you understand? And then you know that the two angles on the floor, so if I were to draw that triangle this way,
It would, the bottom angle should be.
these bottom angles would be the same.
So it would be,
So this is x and 46.
equal angle.
It's not equilateral because they didn't tell you anything about this side. It's
Okay.
isosceles. So they're not asking you what kind it is, but you need to know what kind it is to know how it interacts, okay? So I know that this side and this side are equal. I also know that this angle and this angle are equal. So I'm going to put an X over there. And what do I know about those three angles? What do they add up to? 180. So I do X plus 46 equals 180. And then I subtract 46, and I have 2x equals 134. So x equals 67. The angle that's included on the two equal sides, this one here is kind of like where those two sides intersect. That one's not equal to anybody. Unless it's 60, then it is, but it's not equal. You have to find the ones that are equal, okay? So what I tell people is I take my paper, I can't turn this. It lets me make it smaller and bigger, but it doesn't let me rotate it. But I take my paper and rotate it so that the two equal sides are the one forming the mountain, and then I know that the two angles on the floor are the ones that are equal. Remember I told you I'm really bad at spatial stuff sometimes, so I help myself out by turning the paper around. So every rule that I have taught you applies to this, and I happen to see two x's in this picture. So when I see an x, what do I know about this angle right here?
Not the same.
It's going to be equal to the other guy. And what do I know about this guy right here?
It's gonna be equal to
It's equal to this guy because they're across each other on an x, okay? Don't forget what you already know. Now, do I have something in each of those angles? What do they add up to?
180
125 plus 30 plus x plus 37 equals 180. And go ahead and solve it and tell me when you're done. What do the three angles of this triangle add up to? What do the three angles of the triangle add up to? 180, right? What does this angle and this angle add up to?
180.
All right. So let's make this a P. Let's make that a P, right? So I know 50 plus P equals 180, right?
Yeah.
And I know 30x plus 20x plus P equals 180, right?
Yeah.
So both P has to be the same in both equations. So whenever you have an outside angle, an exterior angle, that's what that 50 is. He's on the outside of the triangle. He equals the sum of the two angles he's not touching. An exterior angle equals the sum of the two angles he's not touching. Now, you don't have to do that. You could do what Aiden was going to do. You can make this a 130 because you know that adds up to 180. And then add the three together and make them equal to 180. Or you could say 30x plus 20x equals 50. 50x equals 50. X equals 1. If you do it the other way, just is more complicated. 130 plus 30x plus 20x equals 180. 50x equals 50. X equals 1. It doesn't